Hello everyone. So welcome to the Institute of Chartered Accountants Curriculum 2025. What are the learning objectives for this particular session? Evaluate existing processes to identify opportunities for enhancement. So how do you do that? Create innovative develop creative problem solving skills using the Scamper model. So we are going to talk about that. More importantly, we are going to talk a little bit about the Blue Ocean strategy in terms of innovation and creativity, and evaluate feasibility of implementing innovative ideas in different contexts. Right. First of all, let's look at what do you really mean by continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is never ending. As I spoke to you in one of our previous sessions, perfectionism is a journey, it's not a destination, and it's a systematic effort to improve your products, services, processes by making small and incremental changes. Right? Now, you know that there are two words here which are often confused but have different meaning: inventions and innovation. Now, what do you mean by inventions? Inventions is where you invent something for the first time. Now, we see that there has been a drug invented for cancer. Now, that is an invention. So, let's look at continuous improvement. So, continuous improvement is never ending. So, as we discussed in one of our previous sessions, perfectionism is not a destination, it's a journey. Right? So, it's a never ending systematic effort to enhance products, services and processes by making small incremental changes. Now, what we should understand is two different words. Is it the same or different? And if it's different, what's the difference? Inventions and innovations. So, what is an invention? Invention is where you invent something for the first time in the world. So, we know recently we hear of a new invention of a cancer drug. Now, that's an invention. The first time the photocopier was invented, the first time the scanning machine was invented, the first time the mobile phone was invented, those are all inventions because it's the first time, right? But of all innovations, inventions count for only approximately 5%. Rest of it is all innovation. Then what is innovation? These small improvements, incremental improvements like add-ons, improvements, changes, which actually occupy 90% or 95% of the innovation space. So, what is important is not inventing something totally new to the world, but how do you work on these small incremental changes. So, it involves analyzing current performance, identifying waste, and implementing small adjustments like plan, do, check, act cycle. We are going to talk about that also, right? And also, how do you kind of foster change in building a new way of doing things, right? So, we are going into creative problem solving using the Scamper model, right? So, what is the Scamper model? Substitute. So, most often what do we do is we substitute something with something. Okay. Now, the most common substitution that you do is, as opposed to writing a document, you type it via email. Now, that's a simple example for substitution. You combine, right? Now, if you look at the new hybrid education model, is a combination of physical and online. So, that's another solution, right? That's another solution. Adopt. So, sometimes you adopt to a particular situation as a solution to a problem, right? Or you modify a certain behavior. So, modifying means changing a particular behavior, stopping a new old behavior and getting into a new behavior. That's modification in order to find a solution for your problem. Put to another use, right? So, say for example, it often happens with employees, right? Most often what we see is that employees are not productive, not because they are essentially bad, because they are in the wrong job. So, most companies, what they do is they do a job rotation to a place that the employee can positively contribute in that position. So put into another use somewhere. I'm just giving you one easily understandable example. Eliminate, right? So you might eliminate a certain process. This is not required. Now I know one of the examples of a leading group of companies. There is a head of finance who leads a very young generation team of finance professionals, right? Mostly Z generation. So he calls upon his young finance team and tell them, today is Thursday, today and tomorrow don't do any work. Stop all your work. I want you to sit at the boardroom and people who are working from home, connect them online and brainstorm and list down all the non-value adding tasks that we are currently doing. Right? So we can have a chat on Monday. Right? So these are tasks that he's giving to his young finance professionals who are essentially Z generation to relook at what we are doing now. So then I asked, what was the outcome of this? So he said, some of the most time consuming, tough tasks that my staff is doing on the month end, right, included 3 reports, which we totally eliminated, right? I asked why? Because they found out that it's not adding value and nobody's reading those reports. So they saved a lot of time. Otherwise, the staff has to work overtime and then staff is demotivated and you have done all the hard work but nobody's using it. So eliminate it. And the next one is reverse. Reverse something that you have been doing before. So this is a Scamper model for problem solving where you have basically 7 different options, right, without getting stuck. So the problem is, in effective problem solving, rather than getting stuck into one dimension, you have 7 different options to go in your problem solving process. So the next model that we discussed was the plan, to, do, check, act cycle. So let's look at that. So plan starts from here, plan a change or test it, aimed at improvement. So one thing is you're planning a change and you test that change. Why do you do that? For you to have some improvement, right? So in the first place, why do you make decisions? Either to capitalize on an opportunity or to correct a mistake that you're doing currently. So both can be that. So first of all, you need to plan, this is the particular activity that we are trying to improve because we are not currently doing it well, or else we are doing this, planning this to capitalize on this new opportunity that is coming from the broader environment. And once you've done that and tested that, carry out the changes or tests, preferably at a small scale. So you start at a small scale. Now if you look at the Kiehl's supermarkets, they are piloting automated checkouts. So into the future you will have counters which you can check out on your own, right? Where you hit the barcode, keep on checking, and you get the amount, you put the credit card, and then you walk out. No staff member there, right? But the problem is, where they are currently stuck is certain items like coconut, for example, right? Leaves and some things does not have a barcode, or like dal or sugar or rice, where you have got to get an assistant of Kiehl's to wait and put a tag. Now that is where they are stuck. So when you carry it out at a smaller scale, you can identify your problems. Okay? Now look at what is happening in the rest of the world. If you look at places like Tesco or Walmart or Costco, one of these biggest chains, they'll have 15 counters, 14 will be automated, 1 will be manual. And that's for that old lady or the old gent who is not very familiar with technology or has a huge what you call trolley of stuff, is too much for her to do it alone. There's just one counter. And how do they find a solution to this problem of getting it weighed by a weighing girl and putting the barcode? Or how do you punch in a coconut, for example? What they do is their weighing counters and the coding counters are the one and the same. So you put your dal and come, you keep it on the counter, it weighs, you push the code, then it says dal 1 kilo. So what has happened, it eliminates the job of the cashier, it eliminates the job of the weighing and the marking girl, right? So probably can have loss of jobs. I'm not declining that, but the fact remains that they are testing it now. Sometimes you might have not even seen this. So if you go to some outlets, you will see they are piloting it. They are starting with a small scale to identify where corrections can be done, and then check, study results, what did we learn, where did we go wrong, and then act, adopt the change, abandon it, and run through the cycle again. So then basically you run the whole thing. Plan, do, check, and act. So those are the two models that we discussed here. So we discussed the plan to do, check, act model, fostering culture where everybody could seek betterment and build feedback loops for sustained growth and competitiveness, right? So this is why we talk it a never-ending thing of continuous improvement. So these are small things that you do, not inventing a totally new thing for the world. I'm not saying that it is not relevant, but it will seldom come. That's why it's still occupying only about 5% of all innovations. Right. So what are the stages of continuous improvement? First of all, identify the target process. You need to identify the target process. What are you planning to do with this, right? How are you going to plan the change? How are you going to innovate something? So you need to identify the targeted process. And what are we currently doing now? How are we doing it now? And then organize and empower an improvement team. So you have got to put a team to work on this. And ideally, they will be differently skilled who can contribute into different areas of this continuous improvement project. So probably you will have an IT guy who will give the systems expertise. You will have a process guy who will give you inputs on the process. You will have a finance guy to see the financial feasibility, for example, right? So you will have a complementary skill set who will be brought together with diverse views who can basically help you in the ideation of this. You need to describe the issue, concerns, or opportunities. What is the issue that you're trying to solve, right? So most of the supermarkets would want to do this, not simply to automate, but one of the biggest problems that the supermarkets have is turnover. Right? Some supermarkets are running a turnover as big as 100%. So just imagine the cycle. For every 100 person who come in, 100 people have gone out. Just imagine the pressure on recruitment. Just imagine the pressure on training. By the time they are trained, they are gone. So the issue is probably, I'm not saying it's the only issue. Automation is, anyway something that is coming. So the issue would be high turnover, concerns, and then the opportunity could be how do we find a solution for this extensive pressure on recruitment and training of staff and turnover. Collect current performance data, right? You need current data, and then create a process map of what you want to do. So these are the stages of continuous improvement, and one thing that is most important at this stage is the composition of this team. Do you have enough expertise and contributory skills, and are they representing different diverse groups, bringing in different specialities, and also have you empowered them enough? Because if they are given a very strict guideline to work with, chances are that you will come up with limited results. Right? Continuous improvement initiatives, employee training. Now, you might ask, what has training got to do with continuous improvement? Employee development is critically important for employees to feel that they are a part of the organization and they are contributing towards the organization. It is critically important, right? So, employee training on an innovative culture and training them on innovation, creativity, challenging the status quo, which is essentially soft skill development, but it is critically important. You can't expect all employees to bring this from home. Some are naturally creative, some are not, right? But to get all of them into one page, most companies run innovation and creativity soft skill training programs. Brainstorming sessions, very critical. So when I was working for one of my previous insurance companies, what we do is our planning cycle starts in October and we go around the branches. The senior management team goes around the branches. We don't go into all the 140 branches, but the fact remains that we bring into hubs, right? And we break them into groups and then give them the improvement areas that we require. Say for example, product development, right? Efficiency improvement, faster handling of claims. So first of all, we give them new product ideas and new product development, right? We brief them and put them into groups, separate them into groups. Each group will brainstorm on their own and they'll come and present their case. And we collect all the data. And then we get into the next topic, which is how do you develop a more faster claims process. Then they'll go into groups and brainstorming again. And they come together and they present their case. So brainstorming is a very effective way of idea generation because you don't work alone. In brainstorming sessions, you work as a group. So when you discuss, you are able to argue out ideas, debate ideas, and remove some ideas and come out with the best. Optimizing processes, how do you optimize a process, right? We want to improve this, how do you do this? Classical example is when the Sri Lanka Distilleries Corporation, right? DCSL, Distilleries Corporation of Sri Lanka, right? I can't remember the name, right? It was a state-owned corporation and it was bought over by the business tycoon Hari Jayawardena, right? So I happened to join after Mr. Hari Jayawardena bought over Sri Lanka Insurance. At that time I happened to join. But you won't believe, right? I walked into, so we were working together, Distilleries Corporation and Sri Lanka Insurance, we were kind of working together in terms of management because these were the two most recently bought over businesses by Mr. Hari Jayawardena. It was amazing to see how these age-old machines, right? These age-old machines have been revamped to give double productivity, right? Double efficiency. Same old machines, how they have revamped. So how do you optimize your machinery? How do you optimize? And simple modifications done rather than replacing the old machines with the new ones. It could be optimizing your machinery output, it could be optimizing your processors and so on. Quality circles are similar to brainstorming sessions, but it takes a more longer term. So say you want a solution for a problem and you select a quality circle representing of anything between 6 to 8 people who can positively contribute to find a solution, and they work as an independent group and they basically give out their solutions as alternatives. So quality circles are similar to brainstorming sessions, but quality circles are given more time. So we give you 1 month or 3 months based on the length and the depth of the initiative. You give them enough time, they work independently alone, whereas brainstorming has sessions more formally under the guidance of someone. Here, quality circles are just appointed for a particular case. They work independently and they come up with their solutions. Initiatives to drive innovation and creativity. So you should have initiatives, right? You should have initiatives. You can't just say that innovation will fall from the sky and people will just come and give you innovation. In one of the previous companies that I worked for, we run an innovation project every year. The employees are told which areas we need innovation and how to do a feasibility study and how to do a project report on it, and then rewards are quite good. Right? Rewards are quite good. Like the first prize is a fully sponsored stay of 3 to 4 days in one of the Asian countries. Right? Second one is a family weekend out in one of the 5-star hotels and things like that. Right? So you should drive innovation and creativity. You can't just expect that it will come. And critical thinking and change management. How do you drive critical thinking? So we discussed in one of the earlier programs that critical thinking is the foundation to innovation. Innovation is when you have decided on a particular initiative and you are implementing it. But from where did it come? From where did it start? Through critical thinking. So that's basically how you drive continuous improvement within an organization. And then 7-step process to drive continuous improvement. A 7-step process, right? Let's look at the 7-step process. Identify, define, gather, analyze, process, implement, present, and improvements. Identify. Identify the problem that you need to solve, or identify the opportunity that you need to capitalize on. That is the first stage. Define it properly. What are you expecting to get from this? Right? Define it properly. And then gather and analyze data of what it is now and what it can be. Right? Then you design the process of what you do, you implement it, and you present improvements. What do you mean by presenting improvements? You have to show results. Right? You have to show results. So how do you show results of what you have done? So identify the opportunity for you to capture on, or the problem that you need to solve, define it very clearly, gather and analyze data, develop the process, implement it, and present improvements to see. See, always you might not have positive results, but you need to present the improvements to see whether you need to do a change into this process or whether you need further alignment or improvement. Right. So this is another model, but somewhat similar. I'm not saying identify the problem or identify the opportunity that you need to capture on. Can be both. Right? And then establish a target goal. What do you want to achieve by this? Right? What do you want to achieve by this? Okay, you have a great opportunity. How do you improve? How do you capitalize on it? How do you establish the goal? Right? So classical example is, I'll tell you an example for the current tourism industry. So the government has given clear instructions that people who want to invest in tourism and the tourist sector and the leisure sector to come out. Now, come out, and there will be certain concessions and certain things that the government will take to help them out. Establish a goal. What do I want to do? I want to ensure that I have this kind of operation to capitalize on the opportunity of tourist arrivals and the hotel industry. Create a strategy map. What am I planning to do by when? That's a strategy map. Right? Measure effectiveness and then celebrate success. Right? Celebrate success. Critically important. So why do you need to celebrate success? That will be your motivator to take up any future challenges, future changes, future innovations, and so on. So let's look at critical thinking. We told you earlier that critical thinking is the foundation for innovation. There won't be innovation in the absence of critical thinking. So what do you need? You need facts. You need facts. So facts will be, where are we now? What are we currently doing? With what results? Okay? what you would be able to do with what kind of results. And then evidence. What is the difference between facts and evidence? Facts is data. Facts is more data about yourself, what you are doing currently with what results, and what you could do with what type of forecasted results. Okay, so what is evidence? Evidence will be either internal or external, right? We have done this, we have been successful. That is evidence, right? This company did this and they were successful, and this company did this, they were a failure, right? So even things like benchmarks, best practices will come under evidence, right? And then observations. What are the observations that you have made? What are the observations that you have made? So classical example is that one thing that I have given, I do a lot of work for the banking industry. I have done a lot of work for, I'm just giving you two examples which I have shared this. And I do a lot of work for Spar supermarkets. So Spar supermarkets, what I've told the outlet managers is spend 1 hour per week on the net to see what are the other local supermarkets doing. What are the other local supermarkets doing, right? And then go and see what the other global supermarkets are doing, what their mother company in South Africa is doing, just to observe what is happening within you, what is happening locally, what is happening globally. And then you need arguments to see, will this work, why will it not work, and so on. You need that to form judgments, include the rational, skeptical, and unbiased analysis evaluation of factual evidence. So you need this as a critical step in the critical thinking process. Now, somewhat similar, but 5 elements of critical thinking. You need to ask questions. You need to ask why, how. Otherwise, you are going through the normal status quo. You are not challenging it. Why nobody is asking? Now, this is the biggest advantage that we have with the latter part of the Y generation and the Z generation. They always question why. And that is why, and that is what the X generation has been made to think. Okay, good question. Why are we doing it? Now they started thinking. So classical example is, look at, I was having a chat with my former company administration and logistics head, and he was telling me, to cut a long story short, he was telling me, we just closed down our city office, right, which you are paying millions as rent, right opposite Satapura. And what did you do? No, we brought it to head office. Where is the room in head office? No, the ground floor, the auditoriums and the training rooms, we converted into city office. I asked why? Because we are no more having meetings at head office, and we are no more having conferences at this thing. All the things are happening as virtual meetings. So some CEOs are asking the question, now, why didn't we think of this 5 years before? Are you clear? Now that is because we were faced up with a situation where we had to change. And why did we bring so many people to head office every month? Right? Now those are because something has happened. But the Z generation will ask that without something like this happening. Why do you want to bring them? No COVID, nothing, but why do you want to bring them when you can have it online? So you need to ask these critical questions and then gather relevant information, think through solutions and conclusions. Think through your solutions and the conclusions to see whether you have got the right decisions, right conclusions. Are your conclusions right? Consider alternative systems of thought. So we discussed that earlier on the decision-making process. For every decision you have alternatives. You need to list out the alternatives and evaluate the alternatives before coming into a concrete decision. And you need to communicate effectively. So these are some of the important critical steps that you might see in your critical thinking process. So now let's go into the connection between creativity and innovation. Innovation is about thinking up new ideas while innovation is the action of implementing those ideas. So that's why I told you earlier, in the absence of critical thinking, there is no innovation. There is no innovation. Critical thinking is the idea generation part, innovation is implementing them, right? So creativity will spark the idea of generating unique concepts, right? So innovation is the execution part. So actually, what you should do in organizations is that you should encourage employees for critical thinking, challenge current processes, and innovations will come as a result of that, right? There's no point in trying to innovate because that's a final step. Because for innovation, you have got to look at investments, you have got to look at feasibility, everything. But creating those diversity of ideas is critically important. That's what you should drive employees of organizations to do, right? So that's what this famous example that I shared of one head of finance telling, list out all the non-value adding tasks. What is he asking? Critically think through, right? What is the innovation? We stop 3 reports and save time for other important tasks. So it all starts with critical thinking. Innovations within an organization, employee innovations can deliver tremendous value, immaterial of their levels, right? So I know I told you about the innovation drive, what one of my previous companies had. You won't believe the first prize of an Asian tour was won by the male division peer. So we get before digitalization, we used to get a lot of mail, and we used to use a letter courier called Pronto, right? And there was a huge delay from the time the letters come to the male division for it to go to the divisions. So he introduced a mechanism which I don't have time to explain now, but he went into a coding system where he doesn't have to go through, and he just spends minimum time of dividing into units. So this idea came from the smallest place in the organization. So you have to encourage them to take risks, right? And never punish failure. If you punish failure, right, they will not get into any innovations. But now there is a company in the world, it's a leading research-based pharmaceutical company. They celebrate failures, right? What do you mean by celebrate failures? Champagne, yay, we failed. But they separate failures into 2 segments: ignorance and genuine mistakes. So say for example, one scientist developed a drug, right? It would have been a great invention into the whole world, just like the cancer drug will be, right? So we are hearing it for the first time. From the day that I was born, and first time I'm hearing of a cancer drug, right? So that will be a great invention. But see, if he failed, finally at the final stage, he saw some side effect of that drug, which made it not commercialized. You can't commercialize it because of that. Now, that kind of mistake is celebrated. Why? To encourage these people to innovate more and more and more without fear, right? Because it is a genuine mistake. But if you got it right, you would have won the world. So we are going into the innovation radar. Sometimes we think that innovation comes only from products and services, right? But innovation have multiple areas. Now, what is your product? Now, here is the majority of the innovations that are happening in the world. People are very innovative with their product, adding new features, adding improving quality, adding combinations like shampoo and conditioner, for example. Now that's an innovation. Before you didn't have shampoo and conditioner together, right? And then coming out with new preparations. Now those are all the what factor, your product factor. And then you have customers. Who are the customers that you're serving? you can be innovative with your customer segment. So if you look at a place like Fab, for example, what is their biggest customer base? Walk in, sit, have a quick snack and go, or walk in, buy a snack and go. That is their biggest customer base, right? Now, if you look at, they have another customer base where they go into parties, into meetings, but it's the same sandwich, the same roll, it's the same patty, it's the same pastry, it's the same iced coffee, it's the same orange juice. But a new customer segment called meetings, conferences, right? They're going into that segment. So it's a new customer base. It's a new customer base. Okay? And then if you look at, try to give you not all examples, supply chain innovations. Now if you look at how Cargill's got the competitive advantage, Cargill's some time back was basically a very expensive shopping destination. Only the rich people used to go there, right? But today, it's a common man shopping destination because they innovated their supply chain. So they cut off the intermediaries. Now what is their competitive advantage? Lowest price on your way home, or on your way home, lowest price, right? Now how was this achievable? What did they invest? They innovated in the supply chain, cut off all the intermediaries, set up collection centers, right? And then cut off the additional cost they used to incur in the supply chain and pass on that value to the consumer. So innovation in the supply chain gave them a unique, sustainable, new competitive advantage. Then if you look at presence, where you are, an example from Starbucks, for example. Now, Starbucks dropped off their coffee part from the Starbucks logo. This was a case study in CIE. They basically dropped off the coffee part because they wanted to go beyond just coffee. They wanted it to be a cafe, right? A beverage company and a cafe where people can spend their time, log into the net and do their work and so on and so forth. And why they did that was to penetrate the Chinese and the Indian markets, because China and India are not coffee drinking markets, it's tea drinking markets, right? So one thing is they wanted to penetrate the Chinese and Indian market, which was the fastest growing economies, and also they changed the presence, where they are present, right? And they got a new tagline for their business called the third place. What do you mean by the third place? First place is obviously your home. Second place is your office. Third place is Starbucks, right? First place office, first place home, second place office, third place Starbucks, right? So what did they do? They went and set up themselves as a beverage and a cafe company, and they set up their stores or outlets near bus stations, near train stations, near schools, near universities. So they changed their entire strategy of where they compete from, right? And customer experience. So if you look at the coffee companies, if you look at starting from barista to, I mean, it's a concept that has been there in the world, barista to coffee bean to whatever, it's a new customer experience, right? So you don't come there like you come to Fab or Per & Sons or Caravan, for example. You come for a different customer experience, and they are able to give a different customer experience, right? But I've seen Uber Eats coming there, Pick Me Eats coming there. Honestly, I don't know why, but that's not one of their core markets, because I don't think they wanted the Uber and the Pick Me to be their customers, but people ordered, right? It's like McDonald's, for example. McDonald's does not cater to, as their core market, to vegetarians, right? So if you look at their signature brand is the Big Mac, which is a beef burger, and they are meat specialists, but they have a vegetable burger, because say you have a four-member family, father, mother, daughter and son, and the father is a vegetarian. Now you can't go to McDonald's and say, tell the father, Tata, go and have your meal from Saraswati and come. No, you can't do that. So because of that, you have a vegetable burger there, right? So it's not one of their core market. Similarly, with all these coffee shops, Uber or Pick Me to deliver your home is not their core market. They want them to come and experience the atmosphere, experience that environment, and to relax and do their work. So you will see that there are many ways that you can innovate rather than just on products or services. So this is called the innovation radar. This is called the innovation radar. Right. So we are moving into Southwest Airlines, right? And this is an example for Blue Ocean strategy. And I'm just trying to get a little bit of time to explain this to you. Okay. Now, Southwest Airlines is the largest budget carrier in the US, and they came up with this Blue Ocean strategy, and it is given as a case study for Blue Ocean strategy. Now look at this line. Look at this line. This is land travel. This is land travel. Okay. So price. Okay. There is a cost. There is a fuel cost. That is, land travel means you travel from Chicago to California by your car. Okay. So there is a price, fuel cost. Meals, no meals. You have got to buy your meals. Lounges, no lounges. If at all, you will have to rest at a motel with your cost. Seating classes, no seating classes. 2 front seats, 1 back seat, right? 5 people. Hub connectivity. What is hub connectivity? Hub connectivity is hub and spoke system. Now, easiest way to explain it is, if you are trying to go from Galle to Kandy, you have to come to Colombo and then go. So Colombo becomes the hub. Of course, now highways and all have connected to a certain extent. So probably if you want to go to Las Vegas from California, probably you have to come to Chicago, which is the hub, and then go. So that's the hub and spoke system. So there is no hub, right? You drive direct. Friendly service, no friendly service. If your wife is friendly, she is in a good mood, good. Otherwise, bad, right? Speed, low, right? But frequency, high. Why? You can go at any time. You don't need to wait for flights, right? You take the car and drive. Now that's the land route. Now this is average airlines. These average airlines. So price is high, meals are there, right? Lounges are there at the airports. Seating classes are there, first class, business class, economy, right? Hub connectivity is there. You have to come to a hub and go in US, because main hubs and then go. Friendly service is there, right? And then speed is there, much more than land travel. Okay? Very different models. What did Southwest do? This is the Southwest line. Southwest created a line in between those two. So first of all, let me explain to you what do you mean by red ocean. Red ocean is where all the competitors are there. So all the budget airlines in the US will be competing in this space, right? Now, what does Southwest do? They go and create a new line, right? Price is slightly higher than you driving by car, much lower than flights. Meals, very standard meal, a small snack, right? Lounges, not very luxury lounges. Seating, no seating. No seating in the sense like no business class, first class, all same. Hub connectivity, no hub connectivity. So what happened? They flew from one small airport to another airport, whereas others had to fly to Chicago, New York, California, and then go, right? So they flew from one small one to another one. So no hub connectivity, right? Look at the service, friendly service they raised right up. And then speed, higher than even normal airlines. Why? So if you want to get to Las Vegas from California, you have to otherwise come to Chicago and go. but now you can directly travel. So speed is higher, right? And then frequency departures high. Now what have you done here? What you have done here is now Southwest is not competing with the airline market, it is competing with the land travel market. Interesting, right? That's what you mean by blue ocean. So if you are running a taxi company, you will, if you are running a taxi company, you would be here, right? You're competing with all the other taxi and paid forms. Okay, do I pump fuel and go, or do I hire? You will be in this space. If you are in this space, right, you will be competing with all the other airlines, right? United Airlines, Delta, you name it. 20s of budget airlines in the US. But what have you done? You are competing in a space where there is no competition at all. Where there is no competition at all. Now that's a classical example for blue ocean strategy of Southwest Airlines. I invite you to search a little bit more on Southwest Airlines as the blue ocean strategy to learn more about the blue ocean strategy. Now, the critical part of the blue ocean strategy, so I'm going to give you another example of the blue ocean strategy. You also look for another blue ocean strategy called yellowtail wines, yellowtail. So yellowtail again is a wine, but you know wines can be very expensive, very, very, very expensive. And you know how the steward comes and shows you the wine. He'll read the whole thing, which vineyard is coming, how long it's been brewed, right? What quality it has, aroma, everything, right? And then you put a little for you to taste the wine, and you're drinking for hours, smelling it. So you're supposed to, when you're smelling it, you're supposed to go to the vineyard, right? They're very expensive. Okay? So what Yellowtail did was they totally went out competing with the expensive wine brands, and they started competing with the beer market. So say for example, they market it as a substitute for beers, and they call it the fun wine, right? No complications, no big data, no big vineyard history, nothing. It's a fun wine, much cheaper, and they competed in the beer market. It was a wine, but they get in the beer market. And no major mass media communication strategy. What they had was a push strategy, got their intermediaries to push it. What did they do? Got all the wine stores to sample Yellowtail wine to all the beer drinkers. Sir, try this out. She really liked, and all of them wore Yellowtail hats, caps, and Yellowtail t-shirts. And the rest of the intermediaries, the wine stores and the supermarkets did the rest. So two examples which you can research into, Southwest Airlines and Yellowtail. And here is what you actually do through the blue ocean strategy. So what you actually do is you reduce some things, right? You reduce some things. You are not giving food as much as other airlines do. Probably you are giving peanuts and Coca-Cola. So you reduce some things, right? You eliminate some things like hub and spoke connectivity. Eliminate. I'm not going to run into the expensive airports. I'm going to run from small airports to small airports. So going into hubs is eliminated, right? Raise. What do you raise? You raise something beyond other companies like customer service, right? And you might create new things that the other people did not have. So this is the framework for you to have a blue ocean strategy. You reduce some things below other industry standards, you eliminate some things that the other industry companies are doing, you create something new that the other industry companies are not doing, and you raise something that other companies are doing more than what they are doing. So this is the framework to create a new value curve. So we are going into our final slides, right? Yeah. Perfectly okay with time. So I'm not going to spend too much of time here. This again Harvard research. In a survey of over 200 employees, 50% said they were not safe to speak of new ideas. No psychological safety. They were not scared to talk about problems, but they were scared to talk about creative ideas. Problems I can speak, but new ideas no, right? Employees felt that the risk of speaking up seemed greater than the possible benefits. So uh, the benefits are less, the risks are more, because they think that that I know too much. Okay. Employees often held back their ideas as managers reacted negatively to their previous suggestion. So I gave a suggestion previously, but I didn't get a good feedback. So I'm not going to give it again. So this is the source, right? Harvard Business Publishing, right? 2020. The last slide for this session. In a survey of 200 employees, 50% said that they were not safe to speak of new ideas. I think I did that again. Yeah, same slide that is gone. So, right, so got duplicated. So you see the problem here. It's all previously what we talked about, upward communication. How comfortable people feel to talk about their problem. So to sum up, we talked about decision-making models, how critical thinking is the foundation for innovation, how do you drive an innovation culture, and how do you drive continuous improvement. And you need to have a culture of continuous improvement. And you talked about, without getting stuck in just one innovation method as product or services, we talked about the innovation radar, how there are different options for innovation. So if you go and search a little about the innovation radar, it will give you examples of all the example, at least one example for each of the innovation radar items. And then we went into finally the blue ocean strategy. And I suggest that you look at blue ocean strategy because it's a way forward to work in a very competitive environment, and how you do something differently in a way that you do not compete in a red ocean, right? It takes time, but it's much more useful. And there was a question that one of my participants asked, how sustainable is a blue ocean strategy? Say for example, Southwest Airlines had this blue ocean strategy, but why can't another company, another airline copy that? Answer is yes and no, because the reason is United Airlines tried this, but they miserably failed. Why? Because Southwest Airlines has a culture that is coming through its people, right, which is very difficult to copy. So any innovation that is coming from product, services, technology can be copied easily. But if the innovation is coming through people and the culture of the organization, that competitive advantage is more sustainable than any other innovation. So until we meet with the final topic, thank you and good luck.